Welcome, it is Mitch. I'm on YouTube. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel as we try to build this thing up. Again, please subscribe to the channel. Click that button. It's real simple to do. Packers clinch a playoff berth. Dominating fashion. 34-0 win over the New Orleans Saints on Monday night. It is our instant reaction to the Packers win. A 34-0 shellacking of New Orleans on national television. And there is something so special about Lambeau Field in December, even in January, obviously, too. These cold weather games, the snow games. If you haven't experienced it, I don't have a completely objective or impartial stance on this, so I'll leave it for others to decide. But many would and do refer to Lambeau Field as the Mecca of the NFL. And all those aerial shots of Titletown and, the Aaron's Hill and the Hinterland Brewery and the ice skating rink and the football field down the way, not Lambeau, but the field that kids play on. And, I remember when that used to be like a Kmart and a Shopko was there, and there was like a stadium bakery. And I can remember when all those things were in place, and now it's developed into Titletown, and seeing all those aerial shots, there's something super, super special about Lambeau Field, but more so in the winter. Like, it carries an aura with it year round. Like, you're just watching that game tonight, and obviously it helps that they beat the crap out of the Saints. So many other descriptors I could use, but they beat the crap out of the Saints, and that helps. But just seeing Lambeau for what it is in these games, I've been to my fair share of cold weather games at Lambeau, December, January, even playoff games, snow globe type games at Lambeau, and it is special. On that one on Monday night to clinch a playoff berth, it seemed like a foregone conclusion entering the game. The Packers were 14-point favorites, but nothing is given in the NFL. It really isn't. I know that sounds like a throwaway line to use. And the Saints were without their starting quarterback, their starting running back, their wide receiver 1, their wide receiver 2. We didn't get to see Marquez Valdez-Scantling. We didn't get to see Chris Olave, Alvin Kamara, Derek Carr. But you still have to go out there and punch in and punch out. And the Packers, they did that start to finish. I know Matt LaFleur says often 60 minutes, and he said it coming out of halftime. Like, I want a full 4 quarters, 60 minutes of football, a complete game, a complete performance. And I record these videos right after the games go final, so I don't get a chance to watch Matt LaFleur's pressers in the postgame before we record here. I'm interested to see how he categorized this game. I would say probably not a full 60-minute, start to finish, what he would like to see, because I thought the passing game primarily in the second half, there were patches where it just seemed off, and there was a 4-drive stretch in the second half where the Packers went punt, field goal, and you're still getting points on 2 out of those 4 drives, so 50%, but it just seemed off at times, the rhythm of the passing game, and so there's certainly some bolts that need to be tightened as you get ready now to turn the page on a short week and head to Minnesota to face off with the Vikings. But I just thought everything about this game, for the most part, for the Packers was just dominance. It was the first shutout in the NFL this season. Like, no team had been shut out. And again, I know the Saints are dealing with injuries, but they started Jake Haener last week. Rattler replaced him in the second half. They didn't have Olave last week. Their number 1, their star wide receiver, and they still put up points. And Rattler started 3 other games this year. They also didn't have Olave. They haven't had Olave in weeks, and it's hard to shut a team out in the NFL. I don't care who's out there. I don't care what the scheme is. I don't care what team it is. And this was the first shutout. I think I saw something where it was like the second time in the last 370 games, 369 games where the Saints have been shut out. Like, that's crazy. Think about it. Many 16-game seasons, now 17 games on the schedule, and that was just the second time in like the last 370 contests that the Saints have been shut out. And, I'm not going to pat myself on the back, but something I do like to point out, I harped on this repeatedly in videos last week and throughout this week. I had said I hoped that the Packers would sit Jair Alexander in this game. You knew Quay Walker was going to be out because LaFleur said it was a week-to-week injury. You knew Bullard was going to be out because it was categorized as the same. Evan Williams and Jair Alexander were the 2 names to watch. And, 2 weeks ago, Jair Alexander was a limited, and then I think he was a full participant the last week of practice and then sat out the game for the Packers 2 weeks ago. This week, leading up to the contest against New Orleans, Jair was a full practice participant all week, leading many to believe he would play. And Tom Pelissero of NFL Network tweeted out over an hour and a half before kickoff that Jair would not be playing for the Packers in this one. And I was hoping that would be the case, because while the Packers have to focus on the task at hand, I also think they need to have an eye towards ahead of the postseason. And here's what I said point blank. If you can't handle the Saints, and when I say handle, I mean if you can't control the game, dominate New Orleans without Jair and Evan Williams, and again, we knew Bullard and Quay Walker would be out. That's 4 defensive starters. But if you can't dominate the Saints without Jair and Evan Williams, they're really good players, but the Saints are a really bad team. No offense to them. If you can't dominate that team without Jair and Evan Williams, you're not going to make much noise in the postseason. You just aren't. If you need those two, and they're really good, but if you need those two to really control things against New Orleans, it does not bode well for your postseason chances. And from that perspective, I had said it in videos last week and this week. I said, I hope they sit Jair. I don't need to see Jair against the Saints. I don't need to see Evan Williams against the Saints. I need to see Jair round 1 against the Rams, round 1 against potentially Atlanta or Tampa Bay. I need to see Jair divisional round weekend when Green Bay travels to Philly or Detroit or potentially Minnesota. I need to see Jair in the NFC Championship balling out. I need to see Jair in February in New Orleans. Now, I want him to get reps before the playoffs start, and I do believe in some situations there's a rust factor, but I'm a big believer in that it depends on the position. Like, I would not want my quarterback sitting out this many games and then, hey, back for the postseason. Corner's kind of one of those positions. Like, I would like to see Jair get some reps, if he's ready, against Minnesota, and get some run against Chicago in Week 18, even if that game's pointless for the Packers. I didn't need to see it 3 weeks out from the postseason, though, against the Saints. I just didn't. And I get the other side of the coin. If your guys are healthy, cut them loose, let them go. Clearly, Jair still is not. Maybe there was more hesitation with Green Bay because of the opponent, not to disrespect the Saints. I'm glad he sat out. Didn't need to see him against New Orleans. Would love to see him get out there against Minnesota, but I'm looking big picture. They need Jair in the postseason. They do. They need Evan Williams in the postseason. How about Zane Anderson, first NFL start? I thought he was tremendous. Name was brought up in the broadcast quite a few times. Had a really nice interception. Potentially could have had 2. But yeah, hindsight's 2020. Go look at my videos from the last week and a half, 2 weeks. I've been consistent on this from the start. Did not need to see Jair in this one. Did not need to see Evan Williams in this one. Knew Bullard and Quay Walker would already be out. Because if the Packers defense was going to have fits with this version of the Saints offense, with all those backups, just because 2-3 wasn't in the lineup, just because your rookie safety out of Oregon wasn't in the lineup, it's not gonna be a good enough group even with those guys in the postseason. And so I thought the defense was phenomenal. I thought they were tremendous. You're down 4 starters on that side of the ball, and you skunk the opponent. Just incredible for Jeff Hafley's group. And again, I'm going to first shutout in the NFL this season. It is hard to hang up a goose egg on the other side of the scoreboard, to hold your opponent down for 60 minutes. And there were only a couple of real threatening drives for the Saints that both fizzled out. Just absolutely tremendous from Jeff Hafley's group. It is Mitch. I am on YouTube. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. Packers hammer the Saints 34-0, clinch a playoff berth. It is, it's kind of irritating. Like, the Packers, there's a possibility they end up winning 13 games, and they're a wild card team, like a clear wild card team. They're 11-4 with 2 weeks left, and they have a 0% chance to win the division. You just don't see that too often. It's how loaded the NFC North is. Like, the Packers could win 13 games, and in those other opponents, those 3 other opponents they have on the schedule next year, because, every team in the NFC North will be matched up with a full division in the NFC, a full division in the AFC, and then you play each other, 2 times apiece. And then those other 3 games are against teams from 2 in the NFC and 1 in the AFC that finish in the same place as you. The Packers could go 13-4 and have a 3rd place schedule next year for those other 3 games, which is it's just insane to think about. Flip side of the ball in this one, too, like, the offense, those first few drives were just surgical. I don't know how else to describe it. It was absolutely surgical. First 2 drives, too, it's the little things that I just love to see. Those first 2 drives for the Packers, one on the first drive, one on the second drive, they were faced with a 3rd and 6 on both possessions. Both times, those 3rd and 6 scenarios turned to a 3rd and 1 because Love's cadence and his hard count got New Orleans to jump up front. And those things matter so damn much when you're in bigger games with bigger consequences down the road. If you can turn a 3rd and 6 into a 3rd and 1. Now, I know typically it's, bad teams make those mistakes like the Saints did. Back-to-back drives, 3rd and 6, snap of a finger, they're both 3rd and 1 because you get New Orleans to jump off sides. But it is, though, I pay attention to those things. Rodgers used to make a living out of it, and then he would take a deep shot down the field and sometimes connect. Those things are the ones you circle back to. Imagine Green Bay's at Philly, at Detroit, divisional round weekend. Imagine wildcard weekend, they're at LA, they're at Atlanta, they're at Tampa Bay. And it's 17-17, late third quarter, a big 3rd and 6 for the Packers. Love gets them to jump offside. 3rd and 6 turns to a 3rd and 1. And with this Packers offense, with that offensive line and that damn running back, number 8, Josh Jacobs, who's a freight train from hell, 3rd and 1 feels like an automatic. You go under center, you hike it, you turn around, you hand it to 8. Godspeed, he's going to get you at least a yard, move the sticks. And the Packers did that twice, once on each of the opening drives on 2 3rd and 6 scenarios. Freaking loved it. I know bad teams typically make those errors like the Saints did, but you can get other teams to take the bait as well. And so that to me was masterful from Jordan Love with the cadence and the hard count, and LaFleur was in his bag. I mean, those first few drives, it felt like everything was clicking for the Packers. They had Tucker Kraft do a quarterback sneak on was it a 3rd and 1 or a 4th and 1? I believe it was a 4th and 1. Kraft's now 3 for 3 on 3rd and 1 or 4th and 1 quarterback sneaks this year. I was texting a couple buddies, and after Kraft did that, I said, man, they never have Jordan Love do a quarterback sneak on a 3rd and 1 or a 4th and 1. And both of my buddies were like, good, like less risk, injuries, blah, blah, blah. I get that. And then later, like just a couple drives later, it was a 3rd and 1 or a 4th and 1. Forgive my bad memory here, but it was either a 3rd one or a 4th and 1, and they did do a quarterback sneak with Love, and he picked it up. But, first few drives were surgical. The second drive was 96 yards. It took 9 minutes, or like 8 minutes, 55 seconds, resulted in a touchdown. How about, we talk about this ground game, and it's spearheaded by Josh Jacobs, and it looked like he was it an arm injury? But they reported from the sidelines, Lisa Salters of ESPN said, no, he's fine. He could go back, and the Packers are just choosing to go in a different direction with Emmanuel Wilson and Chris Brooks, and that was wise because the game was already out of reach at that point. Don't risk it with Josh Jacobs. Josh Jacobs had a touchdown in this game against New Orleans. Emmanuel Wilson had a touchdown in this game. Chris Brooks had his first career touchdown in this game. This ground game is... Let me ask you this, if you're a Packers fan. When's the last time you've seen this kind of a Packers team where they're playing bully ball, where it's physical? It's, hey, we're going to punch you in the mouth with our ground game. See how you respond. How many times in playoff games of years past is it the Packers getting bullied up front by an opposing offense's running game? And you're frustrated as hell. You're pulling your hair out because Green Bay's getting dominated at the point of attack by an opposing team's run game. And with Rodgers, it was so good, and it was magical and poetic to watch those offenses, but they were offenses built on finesse and, flair and dramatics and big plays and spark plays that, made your jaw drop at Rodgers just pulling a rabbit out of the hat repeatedly. And now there's a Packers team, and it's a new era with Jordan Love as the second-year starter, and they're just pounding the rock and punching the opponent in the face once, punching them again, waiting for a jab back. And oftentimes, when it's this ground game and that offensive line going up against an opposing defense, there is no return jab, and Green Bay just keeps delivering punch after punch until they get a knockout. You got 3 different running backs with a rushing touchdown in this game. You didn't even need Josh Jacobs in the midway through the third quarter because the game was out of reach. Green Bay ran it 39 times, passed it 30. I think I saw they have the second highest run play percentage in the NFL. You got to stick with it, though. We've seen in years past where they've had a good ground game and they get away from it in big spots in the postseason. I don't think LaFleur is going to do that this time around. And I'm not going to say I think. It feels different with the physicality of this team on offense. I believe that. I don't think that. I believe that. It feels different. They're punching teams square in the nose and saying, let's go, give us your best shot back. And they just keep running it and running. Josh Jacobs, 13 carries, 70 yards. Emmanuel Wilson, 11 for 52 and a touchdown. Chris Brooks, 6 for 23 and a touchdown. Love goes 16 of 28, a $182 and a touchdown. Mentioned in the second half, the passing game just seemed off at times. Punt, field goal on a 4-drive sequence. The run game is what's going to carry this team to set up the pass. And I don't remember. They've had physical runners. That 2-3 year stretch, I'm not kidding, with Eddie Lacy was so fun to watch. So fun to watch. When they had the thunder and lightning of Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams, incredible. A.J. Dillon is a bruiser of a running back. He's not a finesse guy. He's not a home run hitter necessarily. He wants to run between the tackles. But the overall landscape of this run game with that offensive line coupled together, it is sock you in the face until you just can't take it anymore and you're throwing up the white flag. You're throwing in the towel. And Green Bay did that tonight with New Orleans. That stiff arm by Josh Jacobs in the first quarter of Tyrann Mathieu, and I love Tyrann Mathieu, Honey Badger out of LSU. That dude was so fun to watch in college, super fun to watch in the NFL. That stiff arm bordered on disrespect. That was crazy. And you know what that is when you do it that early in a game? It's a tone setter. Josh Jacobs like, we're not effing around. Like that is a tone setter of a run. He stiff-armed the Honey Badger into oblivion. The physicality of this team is something we have not seen of Packers teams in years past. And it starts with number 8. I don't know who you want to credit first, but Goody, that's a hell of a signing. This run game is something special. And this run game's something special, and they got a rookie out of USC who I was really high on, Marshawn Lloyd, who hasn't been able to contribute because of injuries, and then had appendicitis when he was set to come back a couple weeks ago, putting him back on the shelf. Think about that. This run game's been incredible with a rookie that they drafted and they're high on, who hasn't gotten a whiff of the field in the regular season, and another running back in A.J. Dillon, who's a veteran, who's got that neck stinger. He didn't play at all this year. I like what I see from Chris Brooks. You see LaFleur hugging him, bear hugging Chris Brooks after his first career TD. Love Emmanuel Wilson. 4.7 average on 11 carries. This run game is special. And you have to credit that offensive line. A group that, knock on wood, that's an offensive line that has not had to deal with many injuries. I think Josh Myers missed one start, right? Everyone else is good to go. Jordan Morgan, first-round pick, rookie out of Arizona, is out for the year, but he was a rotational piece with Sean Ryan early in the season. Sean Ryan's been freaking tremendous. I love this group, man. I love this group. Mitch, I am on YouTube. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Packers clinch a playoff berth. They hammer the Saints 34 rip. Like I mentioned, full 60 minutes start to finish. I don't think you can categorize it as that. Like, what were the hiccups tonight, if you want to bring that up? Jordan Love had a near pick in the third quarter off a deflected pass. I mentioned that sequence. Punt, field goal. Wasn't crazy about that. There were a couple of penalties on Kingsley Enagbari. And then, I'm not going to pile on the dude. He had a quarterback pressure, but, Lucas Van Ness, the first time his name was called tonight was in the fourth quarter on a tripping penalty on a punt. Green Bay was punting, and he got called for a trip. And he's been disappointing, but I'm not giving up hope on Lucas Van Ness. He had a quarterback pressure late in the game, but hasn't had a sack since Thanksgiving. I think he has 3 total this year. There were hiccups. There's things to clean up, certainly, but the overwhelming takeaway from this game can be nothing else but the Packers dominated and looked great doing so against an inferior opponent that they should have dominated, but even to this extent of domination was so impressive. 34-0 over New Orleans. I mentioned the Zane Anderson interception. Troy Aikman saying Edgerrin Cooper and comparing him to Lawrence Taylor was wild to me because the dude's a rookie, but Edgerrin Cooper led this team in tackles in this game with 10. He had 8 solo tackles. This dude wraps ish up. 8 solo tackles for Edgerrin Cooper. No one else on the team had more than 3. Dude's a monster. He's a freak. I want to see him out there for more and more snaps. And without Quay Walker, he's going to get more and more snaps. But the defense, the pass rush, 3 sacks, but a lot. I don't have the numbers in front of me. They had a lot of quarterback pressures. They had a good amount of quarterback hits. Keyshawn Nixon had the strip sack. Rayshon Gary recovered. Brenton Cox, I feel like every week I look in the box score, Brenton Cox has another freaking sack. The dude's been great, and he's getting reps because Preston Smith got traded to Pittsburgh. Just love it, man. Love what Hafley's group did. The pass rush was pretty good. I think that's the key to the puzzle on defense. Like, the takeaways are great, but even if it's not sacks all the time, getting a consistent pass rush, pressures, hits on the quarterback, it had been missing for so long this year, and we're seeing it start to come to fruition these last few weeks. And love that for Green Bay. I think that's the key to the puzzle on the defense, is consistently having that pass rush getting going. And then if you want to cover all three phases, we can always cover all three phases. I mean, Brandon McManus is out there booting a 55-yarder in the dead of winter in Green Bay at Lambeau Field, in the elements, outdoors, and it's right down the pipes. Just 55-yarder, never had a doubt. And then what was the other one, a 47, 48-yarder, something like that? First time since Mason Crosby, which I know was just a couple years ago, but there's been, two kickers peppered in between that, the Crosby point to where we are now with McManus. First time since Crosby in a couple of years where, I shouldn't say it, you don't really hold your breath when the kicker comes out for a field goal for the Packers. I mean, 55 yards, and in the dead of winter, and I was literally like, he's gonna make this kick. Like, McManus, he's got it, and he did. And later on, a 47, 48-yard or something like that, he drilled it. So just can't sing the praises enough of what this team just did to the Saints. And again, I know it's an inferior opponent, but it's hard to do that in the NFL. First shutout this season. A lot of really good teams playing a lot of really bad teams in the NFL. No one's had their opponent hang up a goose egg until this one with the Packers and the Saints. Looking ahead, I mentioned Jacobs with the arm injury seemed fine. Watson's injury, they need him. He's getting starter snaps. I've been so impressed with his route tree developing and how he's not just a deep threat anymore for the Packers. So they need Watson again. I record these right after the game goes final, so I haven't heard LaFleur's presser yet, or usually he's pretty buttoned up about talking about injuries right after a game, so I doubt he says anything about Watson anyways. Maybe I have to eat my words on that, but they need Watson for the long run too. And yeah, I said it all week that this was a game where it was clear. Don't let this hang in the balance entering the fourth quarter. I think I said cut off their oxygen supply early. Cut it off early. This game was over at halftime. It was 21-0 at halftime, and you felt like, are the Saints even able to put up 21 in this game with how bad their offense looks and how great the defense looks for Green Bay? 21-0 at halftime might as well have been 42-0 for Green Bay. And that was one thing I wanted to see, something I said all week. It's not a good Saints team. They're going to finish under 500. They're eliminated from playoff contention entering this game already. Cut off the oxygen supply early. And I did think the offense set the tone. Maybe every time Green Bay wins the toss, just receive instead of deferring. Everyone loves deferring because you want to set up, you want to have some control and set up that picture and paint a portrait in the second half when you get the ball first. You just feel like you're in more control getting the ball coming out of halftime, especially with these new rules where you can't have a surprise onside kick. You have to announce that you're onside kicking it. Green Bay, I mean, last week against Seattle, win the toss, we want the ball right down the field, boom, 7 points, punched you in the mouth on the road in Seattle. This game against New Orleans, get the ball first, right down the field, boom, touchdown, ball back, right down the field, 96-yard drive, chews up 9 minutes, you're up 14 rip. In the blink of an eye, New Orleans is like, what the hell just happened? I do think there's some strategy and numbers probably back up deferring, but this Packers team, when they get up 7-0 lately, I mean, it's becoming a well-oiled machine. And they cut off the oxygen supply early for the Saints. This game was not hanging in the balance center in the fourth quarter, which was something I definitely wanted to see. Again, it felt over 30 minutes in. And now you turn the page, you're 11-4, you got 2 left. You still got to keep winning because Washington beat Philly, and I don't want that 7 seed because if you get the 7 seed, you're likely going to Philly round 1, who looks all but assured to be the 2 seed. And if you're the 7 seed and you beat the 2 seed, no matter what happens in those other games, you're the 7 seed, the last team in, so you're playing the 1 seed the following week, divisional round. And while Minnesota or Detroit are beatable, and Green Bay gets another crack at the Vikings next Sunday in a game that got moved from noon to 3:25, it's a hard task to go to Philly and then potentially to Detroit or Minnesota in back-to-back games in the playoffs, with Detroit or Minnesota coming off a bye. And so I do think it's critical for Green. Like, think about it this way. Would you rather have Green Bay go to Philly and then Detroit? Or would you rather have them, and this is no disrespect to the other teams, or would you rather have Green Bay be the 6th seed and go to Atlanta, Tampa, or LA, and then maybe if Washington's the 7th seed, they upset Philly, and then they're off to Detroit, and then you're playing the winner of the other game between Minnesota and whoever they play. Like, I think there's a huge difference this year in the 6 versus the 7 seed. And Green Bay holds a game advantage on Washington, but they got to hold serve. Yeah, so 11-4. It's crazy that they're the 6th seed, but that's the spot they find themselves in. Big one coming up against the Vikings. We'll have plenty of videos throughout the week, even though it's the Christmas week. My present is posting more videos. It's what we like to do around here. 34-0. Dominating win. It is Mitch. I'm on YouTube. Please subscribe if you haven't already. We'll see you next time.